Welcome back, friends. I have recently been reading a lengthy, exhaustive, informative book coming at you with a review today, A History of the Bible, the story of the world's most influential book by Old Testament scholar and priest John Barton. This book is a kind of epic in scope history book. I want to tell you up front that the genre of this book is history and not theology, and there's a big difference there. John Barton takes us through the process, everything from ancient Israel history to the original writers of the New and Old Testaments, to the scribes who copied them over the centuries, to the influences on those writers and scribes, to political situations that contributed to the context of the Bible, to the Middle Ages, and ultimately until we get to where we are now with what we recognize as the Holy Bible. This book is phenomenal. John Barton must be amongst the most knowledgeable living people concerning the entirety of the Bible. This is a lot of fun. He not only tells us about the history of the Jews in Israel and what is factual in the Bible and what is fictional in the Bible, but he tells us about the beginnings of Christianity, and he goes on about the languages and the translations. And especially, I really enjoyed the medieval period. The medieval period really took off with the printing press and the various different versions of the Bible. Being a biblical scholar is a really broad area of expertise. Not only do biblical scholars learn Greek, and many of them learn Hebrew and Latin, this whole process of becoming a biblical scholar is very illuminating concerning the history of the Bible and the regions in which it was written and the people of those times. It really is an overall history, and even if you aren't a religious person, I am not, but I have a particular interest in the Bible. This is a lot of fun here. It was really illuminating concerning the centuries and centuries through which the Bible was transmitted by scribes. It was a lot of fun. This book talks a lot about problems with the Bible and various different influences concerning particularly the scribes that were transmitting them over the years. Barton tries to piece out what is factional and fictional, and he goes on about pagan influences in the Old Testament manuscripts, and he tries to give us an overall idea of the genuine qualities of the Bible, some of the flaws involved, and he gives us an idea of the political spectrum. There were many influences that went into how the Bible was written and copied, and it's a lot of fun. He goes into the ancient manuscripts and the differences between them and the why concerning the differences, and he talks about the historical processes that historians go through to try to make sense of all this information, to figure out what is true, what may be true, what is fiction, what may be fiction. And ultimately, he gives us a very well-rounded idea of how the Bible came into existence. I give this book a 5-star review. This was a fun read. I was surprised at how fun this book was. I expected it to be informative but dull, maybe slow going, but I was into this. John Barton has a way of writing that kept me wanting more. I kept wanting to know what was going to happen next in this book as far as how the Bible was transmitted through the centuries. And I was surprised at how fun it read. It read fun like a novel almost. It was a really interesting and in-depth book. I just can't say enough about how knowledgeable John Barton is concerning the Holy Bible in its entirety. Not only is he an Old Testament historian, he's actually an active priest. And I was surprised at how fair and balanced his take on biblical history was. I give this book a 5-star review. There's a great notes section in this book. He quotes Barton several times and many other authors. Notes after notes after notes concerning extra reading material. There's even a section in the back that's particularly just about future reading material. So there's a lot of good suggestions for books in this book. It's a phenomenal take. It's a complete production. I was surprised at how much I learned reading this book. It is a pretty lengthy book, but I must say again that it was actually a fun and informative book. I give this a 5-star review, and I highly recommend it. John Barton is one of the most knowledgeable people in the world concerning this subject, and I highly recommend his book, whether you're a believer or you're a non-believer, you're somewhere in the middle, or you're just a history buff, or maybe you just want something to read that's different. A History of the Bible by John Barton. I highly recommend this book to anyone.